This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, let's do a quick revision on what we were doing yesterday. So we were talking about how to go ahead and let's say create an ARM template for a virtual machine service. And we said that this is how the template looks like. So we had declared a couple of parameters and there are a couple of resources that we went ahead and let's say declared. Like for example, the very first thing that I created was a public IP address. So I said we have a public IP address out here, and I said that okay, fine, it is this block of the entire code which goes ahead and creates your public IP addresses out here. And since public IP and the network security group rule can be a standalone resource, meaning let me also open up the diagram so that we can compare what we are creating. Just give us a minute. So it's okay. So let's open this out, and this is how the architecture was looking like. So yesterday we said that it is NIC card, it is virtual networks, subnets, and the virtual machines. All these resources, whatever I highlighted right now, have some kind of a dependency on the other. But a public IP address and a network security group rule, they are not dependent upon any other resource. So these are independent in nature, and you can just go ahead and create them independently. So that's the reason I started off my template with the public IP address. So I went ahead and created a public IP address firstly, then defined a set of rules called network security group rules, wherein I wanted to allow the RDP connections. And I said this is the port 3389. And there is something known as the allow HTTP connection at a priority called 110. And I said the rule direction is inbound. And I also wanted an outbound rule to just display an outbound rule as to how it works. So the direction here is outbound and the priority here is 120. And let me collapse this out. Finally, I came to the virtual network, and since I wanted to attach my network security group rule on the subnet, I went ahead and I said, okay, fine, you know what, this is the virtual network, but this virtual network depends upon a resource ID called network security group rule. So this is a resource ID. So only if this network security group rule exists, so will you go ahead and let's say create the entire virtual network. And once coming inside the subnet of the virtual network, this is how I have displayed, or this is how I have linked my network security group rule to the subnet. So this is the link between those two. And finally, I said I also need a NIC card, which is a network interface card. So this is where a network interface card is coming into picture, wherein I said I need a public IP for the network interface card and also the private IP from the network for the network interface card. And the private IP is coming from the subnet, and the public IP is coming from let's say the public IP resource. So I said okay, fine. Since my template has dependencies, since my template has two dependencies, I said it is depends on the first parameter, and I said this is resource ID, network public IP address parameters, public IP addresses, and etc. And finally, I said okay, fine. You know what? This also depends upon the virtual network because the virtual network will give you a private IP address. So I went ahead and declared the resource ID of the virtual network as well. And this is how I am declaring the IP configuration. I'm saying I need this IP configuration wherein please go ahead and get the public IP address from the resource ID called public IP addresses out here. And finally, please go ahead and get the name of the subnet or the ID of the subnet from the virtual network, the subnet inside the virtual network as such. And finally, I am going ahead and creating the virtual machine wherein I am declaring a dependency parameter for the virtual machine on the NIC card, and I'm giving a size called standard B2S. Declared a couple of parameters called test user and Microsoft hyphen 001 as the administrator username and the password. I change the image. Initially, your template will come with something like 2012. I changed the image to 2019 data center. And finally, I said boot diagnostics is false. So this is what we were doing yesterday. Is that how do you build an ARM template, something like this, and how do you basically build all these resources and etc. So guys, did anyone try this out? Any questions still here? Any questions that I can take? Did anyone try this out and did y'all get any errors here? Anyone? Okay. So in today's session, I want to do something like this. I have just created one virtual machine yesterday, but today my requirement is a bit different. I need I need two virtual machines or multiple virtual machines, and I just need one template out here. So templates are for reusability because this is automation, so you want to reuse things out. So I just need one template, and I need to create multiple VMs. In my case, I need to create two VMs using the same template in the same location, in the same configuration. I'm good with that. So can anyone tell me what do we use here in order to create multiple resources using the ARM template? Now I need inputs from your end, guys. So what do we need here, or what do we include here in the ARM template so that we can create multiple resources at a go? Anyone? Any guesses here? I'm sorry.
Count will introduce concept called count copy index.
Exactly. We'll introduce a concept called copy index. Very importantly, introduce a concept called as copy index. That's great. And we will control this copy index using something called as count. Now, these are the two main parameters, or these are the two main inputs that I was looking for. So let's do that. But before doing that, let's say this is what I want to kind of declare. Count here, meaning the number of virtual machines here are two. I need two virtual machines of the same size, of the same configuration, and etc. So if I were to tell that these are, let's say, we'll just talk about what are the resources that we want to create a virtual machine again. So you need a public IP address. You'll need the energy. You will need a virtual network. So I'm just writing it down in the order in which we are creating virtual network and a subnet inside the virtual network. Then you have the NIC card. Finally, you have the virtual machine service. Now, can anyone tell me, or I'll just go through one after the other. Can just please try to give the input yes, no, maybe anything like that. Now, if I were to create two virtual machines, so this is the virtual machine count. If I were to create two virtual machines, how many public IPs do you think that I would need? Like, is it one sufficient, or do I need two public IPs out here? Anyone?
Two public IP address.
Two public IP addresses. Okay, so two public IP addresses, one for each virtual machine service. And because ideally the virtual machine to a public IP mapping is one to one, so it's a one to one connection. Network security group rules. Do I need one or do I need two here? And carefully, please observe that I'm attaching my network security group rule to the subnet. So do I need two? Do I need one? Anyone?
One.
One, yes. One energy sufficient because I am attaching my energy to the subnet. So whatever virtual machines are getting provisioned inside this subnet. So this subnet is a /24, which can hold up to 251 virtual machines inside it. So any virtual machines that come inside this particular subnet will by default follow the NSG rules that I've attached at that level. Okay, this is so we've established a couple of things. I said we need two public IPs. I said we need one NSG. And how many virtual networks or how many subnets inside a virtual network do you all think that we need?
One.
Do I one? Yes, there is one virtual network. There's just one virtual network and one subnet. NIC cards, guys. How many NIC cards do you all think that I need? So this is the NIC card resource. Should I go with one or should
Two.
two? Yes. You will definitely need two NIC cards. Again, NIC card is the resource which is assigned with the private IP. So you'll have one NIC card per a virtual machine. So one per a VM. And finally, you need two VMs. And very importantly, if you come down here, right? If I go into the VM, let's go down here all the way down here. This is where the virtual machine is getting created. And this is, let's say, if I just go down here, I am okay with the username and password. There is something known as OS disk. This is important. Now, if the virtual machine is getting created, I am also going ahead and creating the OS disk with it in the virtual machine, right? Because this is important for me. Now, do you all or can anyone tell me if I need one OS disk or would I need two OS disks out here? One or two? Anyone? I have two virtual machines. So is one sufficient here?
Yes.
Okay. Any different answers there? One, two. Anyone, guys? Anything else?
Is that additional disk, sir? Or
No, see, I am creating two virtual machines right now. So I have two VMs and my ARM template is also creating the OS disk. So if I have two VMs, don't you think it should create two disks out here?
yeah, two disks is required?
One per VM. So I need one OS disk per a virtual machine, right? Because when you create a virtual machine out there, each and every virtual machine will have its own operating system and the own operating system disk, right? So very importantly, I need one disk per a VM. So I will also need to make sure that even these are two disks that are getting created out here. Okay, get this? Is this concept okay, guys? So these are the number of resources that I am now creating. I am creating two public IP addresses, one network security group rule, one virtual network and a subnet inside it, two NIC cards, two VMs, and two disks, one per a VM. So with this, let's get started editing our template. So this was the yesterday's template that we were working on. So I'm not going to basically do anything in the parameter section. So there is the parameter looks good and etc. What I'll be doing out here is after the VM name, I'll just add one or two more parameters and I will say this is new parameter which is OS disk name because I need multiple OS disks also. And I'll say, okay, fine, the type is again a string and I'll just say the default value is something like OS disk. That's it. This is the only thing that I'm actually giving it. And finally, I'll add another parameter and this parameter is called count. I'll say count. The type here is not a string, but it's an integer. I'm adding an integer value here. and I'm saying the default value is something like 2. So this is an integer, and I'm saying the default value is 2 because I want 2 virtual machines to be created. So let's come down and let's begin to work on our resources like the way we did yesterday. So firstly, I'll just collapse. So this is the best practice. I'll just collapse everything that I'm not working on. I'll just focus upon the resource that I'm working on right now. And the resource that I am right now focused upon is a Microsoft.network/public IP addresses. So this is the resource that I'm actually working on. So let's do one thing. Now I need 2 public IP addresses. So if I go into the public IP address right now, this is something known as ARM PIP. So let me open up a new tab here, or let me put it here. So this is the name of the public IP address that is getting created. I want the name to be something like ARM-PIP1, comma ARM-PIP2. These are the two names of the public IP addresses that I want to go ahead and create. This is how I want to, this is how, let's say, I want to provision it out. For this, what I'm going to do out here is I'll just come here and I'll say, just come down. This particular parameters public IP address, right? If I look into the parameter section, this is going to give me a value called ARM-PIP. I need to add this value. I need to add the base value. This is the base value that I have with 1 for the first time and 2 for the second time. Okay, so this is how I need to make sure that I copy these values out here. So what I'll do here is that let me collapse this section now. I'll just come here, and since I want to add, the function for adding is called concat. I'll say concat this value, which is called parameter something like this, with something known as copy index. Guys, did we do this? Is this okay? Is this the right syntax that I need to pass to create the value? Anything that I'm missing on here? Can anyone tell me, is this the right declaration? Is this the right syntax? Can anyone help me out here? Anyone? I need inputs from your end. It's okay if it is wrong, but I need some inputs from your end. So is this okay? Is this syntax declaration okay? I'm saying concat, meaning I'm saying add parameters public IP address. So parameters public IP address is going to return a value called ARMPIP, and I want to concat this with copy index. Am I missing anything here? Can anyone tell me what will be the entire value? What should be this entire value? Can anyone tell me? Guys, anyone?
Comma one.
Zero
ARM
copy
public
index.
0.
I'm sorry. Yes, ARM. Yeah, you were telling Srija. Please go ahead.
ARM public IP 0.
So ARM public IP is 0. Yes, that's great. So it is ARM hyphen PIP, which is the base value that is coming from this particular string. So this here is ARM hyphen PIP. This here is 0 because copy index by default starts with 0. So I am saying it is 0 for the first time, and then ARM PIP hyphen 1 for the second time, or 1 for the second time out here. But according to my requirement, it is something like 1 for the first time, 2 for the second time. This is how my requirement is. So what should I change here, guys? I don't want this to be 0. I want to basically start from 1. So what parameter or what should I change here? Anyone? I want you all to just kind of guess it out, because these are the very popular interview questions that normally someone would ask, is that how do you change this value and etc. So can anyone take a guess on what should we change here?
In copy index, we mentioned the one.
You mentioned it one. This is called as offset value. It's called as something known as offset. Now, offsets usually start from 0, but if you have to change it, you can say this is 1. This is how I or this is how I change it, and very importantly called as offset. So I declared an offset value. I said it should start from 1. Finally, after the tags or something like that, I'll just go ahead and mention a very important parameter out here called copy, because I need to indicate what are or how many are the number of copies that I need. So this is how the syntax declaration is. I'll say the name of this copy. Since I'm doing a public IP copy, I'll say PIP loop, public IP loop out here. So I'm just giving a dummy name out here. And I'll say the count is parameters count, because this is the count basically that I want to, or these are the number of times that I want to actually go ahead and create things out. Finally, I also have the DNS, right? Or the domain name label out here, which is now called public IP address and then DNS. I also want to change this. After the DNS, I'll just put a comma here. I'll just say copy index, because I need two addresses out here and one. Since I'm using one here, I'll maintain one throughout my template. So this is how I'm creating the public IP address resource. Is this understandable, guys? Did you all get this on what changes that I have done and what basically that we need to do out here in order to iterate the resource out here? Any questions here, guys? And did anyone not follow this? Please let me know. I'll be more than happy to explain once more, because this is a very important concept. So that's the reason I'm just stressing on this one out. Okay. So I'll just collapse this. I am done with my public IP address. I'll open up the network security group rule. And does this require any change? Do you all feel that this requires any change here? Do we need to add copy indexes here also? Because by default, we are saying we need two we need two public IPs. We just need one network security group rule which is attached to the which is attached to the subnet. So the name of this particular network security group rule will come as something like NSG name, and it will come something like ARM NSG. So I am good with this. I am not doing any 1 and 2 here, because I just need one resource out here. And again, I need one virtual network and one subnet inside the virtual network. So let me go back and let me see if I have to change anything here. So are we good to close the network security group rules, guys? Does anyone have any issues with this? So I'm not making any change to the network security group rule. I have like three rules basically, two inbound and one outbound to open up the RDP port and to open up, let's say, the HTTP port. And on the outbound, I'm also opening up the HTTP port out here. So are we good with this? Can I collapse this out? Or does anyone have any questions, or does anyone have any issues with this? Okay, so let me collapse this out and let me open up the third resource that I'm working on, which is the virtual network name. Now it says, okay, fine, this is a virtual network. It's going ahead and it's telling the type is Microsoft.network/virtual networks. And I'm giving an address prefix, something like this. And I'm telling that this resource depends upon the creation of the network security group rule. And finally, I am attaching my virtual network to the my subnet to the NSG that I'm creating above. So I am not making any change again in this resource also, because it's just a single resource that I'm creating. So if again we look at particular requirement, it is a virtual network, and inside the virtual network, I just have one particular subnet. So one VNet and one subnet, and the names of the VNet and subnet is something like, so I'll say name is ARM VNet and ARM subnet. So this is the only thing that I'm going ahead and creating. And finally, I'm coming down to something known as a NIC card here. So let's go into the NIC card. So I'm not changing anything with the network security group rule or the virtual network, but let's go into the NIC card. Now, how many NIC cards do we need here, guys? We have established that we need 2 NIC cards, and the name of the NIC card right now that I have is ARM NIC. So I need my NIC card to be something like, the first NIC card to be something like ARM NIC -1. Second NIC card to be something like ARM NIC -2. So can anyone help me? What should I change here in the resource? What should I add here and what should I subtract here? Can anyone help me with this?
Concat
Anyone?
with copy index.
So I'll say it's concat, and I'll say okay, great. So let me close this bracket, comma, copy index, and 1 is the offset value because I want the first value to be 1 and 2. But if I do this right, I'll be getting something like ARM NIC 1 without a hyphen, ARM NIC 2 without a hyphen. I also want to add the hyphen out here. I also want to add something known as a dash out here. So how do I add this? Because right now my name is something like this. It is ARM NIC 1, comma ARM NIC 2 because I want to basically run this loop twice. So what am I missing here? How do I add it? Anyone?
After the parameter,
I'm sorry.
after the parameter, we have to add comma with hyphen.
Yes, you can do that. So after the parameter here, something known as NIC, you can add something like hyphen, or you can come here in the NIC parameter, or in, let's say, whatever that you're doing here, you can say comma. In here you can say
Quotation.
dash. Yes, you can do this. You can also do this because right now I'm binding 3 things right now. One is the ARM NIC saying hyphen, then 1, comma ARM NIC -2. This is what I am right now doing. And I'll also go ahead and declare something like the copy. So I'll say it is copy because this is something that I need. Count again is parameters count. And the name is something like NIC loop. So I am saying this is the NIC card loop. So please go ahead and create multiple NIC cards out here. And let's talk about the dependency out here. I'm saying, sorry, I'm saying the NIC card depends upon the public IP and also depends upon the virtual network. Now, one thing that I changed here is the name of the public IP address, because public IP right now is not a single resource. It's 2 resources because I'm now creating 2 public IPs out here. So until and unless I have both the public IPs, I don't want this NIC card to be created. So in order to make sure that the change is accommodated, I'll just again take all this resource out. So I'll just rebuild it back again. I'll say it is the resource ID of the public IP address. So I'm just selecting the public IP address, comma. This is now how it will look like. Whatever is the name of the public IP address that you passed here, which is concat, some parameters public IP address, comma, copy index. this should exactly be in the same way here also. In the depends on parameters also, it should exactly be in the same way. I am not making any change whatsoever to the virtual network. Virtual networks, I am not iterating it, meaning I'm not creating multiple virtual networks. It's just one virtual network, so I'm not changing it multiple times. So this is okay. And coming down in the IP configuration, again, I need to change the way my public IP is declared. So let me go here. Let me say resource ID. And let me say again public IP addresses. Parameters public IP address out here. So this is how I'm basically adding things out to it. And then I'm saying the private IP comes from the subnet. So please go ahead and get the ID of the subnet. So Microsoft.networks / virtual network / subnets. So I'm saying this is the ID of the subnet, then parameters vnet name, and then parameters subnet name. So I'm saying, okay, fine, please bind all of them together and please get the ID from there. And finally, once this is done, I'll say, okay, fine. I'll just also collapse this out. So I'm also going ahead and collapsing the NIC card. And this is a final resource that I'll be creating, which is the virtual machine. And I need my virtual machine names to be something like ARM VM1 and ARM VM2. This is the name that I want it to be, or this is the name that I want to create. Now, for that, I'll just go into the VM name and I'll just can add a hyphen also out here. So as someone suggested, you can also do this. So I'll say ARM VM hyphen, and I can just come down here and into the name, I can again say this is a concat, and I can say this is copy index 1. Very importantly, I need 1 and 2 basic. I need 1 for the first time, 2 for the second time. That's how I want to iterate over it. And I'll just go ahead and after the location parameter, I'll just say copy, and I'll say this again. The name is VM copy. Say there's a VM loop. The count is parameters count. So this is how I'm declaring the parameters out here. And since I now have 2 NIC cards, I'll need to construct this entire block. I'll say resource ID of NIC card, comma, parameters NIC hyphen copy index 1. So I'm adding this entire thing. And I also need to change the name of the computer because the name here is something like this. So I'll just copy the name entirely that I'm creating in the virtual machine, and I'll just paste it out here. So I'm looking at each and every line to see whether my template is okay, and I'm trying to recorrect everything. So I'm just creating, or I just want both of the virtual machines to be in a standard -bs2 size, so a b2s size basically. And I'm saying it's a test user, and I'm then saying it is Microsoft -001. And then finally, it's a Microsoft Windows Server 2019. And I need multiple OS disks out here. Okay, I don't need just one. I need multiple OS disks. And the name of the disk is something that I've just provided in the parameter. It should start with OS disk out here. But it should be something like, so I need two OS disks, so it should be something like OS disk ARM VM-1, and second one should be something like OS disk ARM VM-2. This is what it should be. So for that, I'm just coming down. So this is the base name basically that I do have. So I'll just come down here and I'll say, just take this out, and I'll say uncat. I'm adding 3 things out here. One is the parameters OS disk. The OS disk name will give me something like this particular value, which is called OS disk out here, comma. So I'm concatenating this particular value with another value called parameters, VM name, which is ARM hyphen, that's the base value, comma, copy index 1. So this is how I'm doing it. So if you look at this value, the name of the OS disk is something like called OS disk out here. The name or the base value of parameter VM name is ARM VM, and this will be 1 for the first time and say 2 for the second time. So my entire value will become something like OS disk ARM VM1 or ARM, or this is ARM hyphen. So ARM VM hyphen 1 and OS disk ARM VM hyphen 2. 1 for the first time and 2 for the second time. So this is how my OS disk is basically going to or look like. This is what I want. And finally, if I just go down, again I need to change the name of the NIC card. So whatever is there here, I'll just copy it. I'm just copying, or I can also rebuild the resource out here just in case if you want to avoid any syntax errors. Saying again, this is network interfaces, comma, parameters network interface. This is the value basically that I need. And finally, I'm saying diagnostic profile in the boot diagnostics enabled is equal to false because I don't want a boot diagnostic out here. Again, let's review our template one quick time. So this is what we do. We give a foolproof reading for our template. So the ARM template IP looks good. So it is ARM hyphen PIP 1 for the first time, 2 for the second time. NSG, I just need one. I just need one virtual network. I just need one subnet. And I need 2 NIC cards. I need 2 VMs. I need 2 OS disks. And that's the reason I gave a count called 2. You can also change it, let's say at later, or you can change it, let's say at a later point in time also using the parameter overrides and etc. And I have made sure to include something known as copy indexes. So if I look at the name of the public IP, it's looking like something like concat the public IP address with the copy index in bracket 1, and I've declared the copy index value here, and I'm also giving the DNS name label, and I'm saying okay fine, this is how the resources look like. So I'm adding all these things out, and finally I'll just save this out, and I'll open up the PowerShell console. So I'll just open up the PowerShell, and the first thing that I'll be doing is a login hyphen AZ account so that I can log in into my account. So I'll say it is login hyphen AZ account, and let me go ahead and execute this out, and I log in into the Azure account so that we can get started with this. So just give me a minute so that I can go ahead and log into it. So once logged in, so I'm logged in here. What I'll do is that I don't have a resource group. I don't have a new resource group out here. So I'll just go ahead and let's say resource group. And the location of the resource group is important. I'll have to create the resource group in a location called Central US. So let me see. Yes, I have a resource group already created. So I have a resource group in Central US, which is demo VM ARM, which we haven't created anything. It's just lying there. So I'll just go here and take this resource group. And can anyone tell me what is the command that I need to use out here in order to deploy an ARM template using PowerShell script, guys? Can anyone tell me what is the command that I need to use here?
New Azure resource group deployment.
Correct. So it is new hyphen AZ resource group deployment hyphen the name of the deployment, which is something like multiple ARM hyphen the resource group name, which is demo VM ARM. This is the name of the resource group, and then hyphen the template file. Now my template file is sitting in this particular drive, so I'll just take the entire path and I'll say /vmarm.json. This is the template file path that I need. And finally, I won't deploy this out. I just want to see what are the changes that are coming in. I'll say hyphen what if. I'm saying hyphen what if parameter out here. Now you can also declare all these parameters like this. So I'll just put an escape key out here. So in a readable format, you can also go ahead and declare this also. You can also declare all the parameters like this. So it will be a readable format. So what I'm doing is that I'm using something known as an escape key here. This is called as an escape. So this is just below the escape key that you have. It's just like a sliding, exclamation. I mean, it's just like a sliding quote out there. So I'll just take all of these things and I'll say execute. And it now says getting the latest status of all the resources, and it's telling okay fine what I'm doing out here or what I'm creating, what I'm destroying, whatever it is. It'll now try to understand what your template is and it'll now try to say okay fine what your template really is doing out here. So what if parameter here is helping you out in order to just understand what are the changes that will happen. It says resource changes. I need to create 8 different resources. Like I need to create 2 of each type. So I'll have, let's say, somewhere around 8 resources that I need to create. And since this is telling that I have 8 resources to get created, I'll just say, okay, fine. I now execute my template. I won't, I won't say what if right now. And also, if you observe this output coming from all the way to the start, it's a huge output out here which is telling okay fine what all it is getting created and where it's getting created and etc. So it's telling there are about it's a central US and there's something known as ARMVM1 and etc. ARMVM2. It's giving all the properties of the virtual machine and everything that it's getting or everything that's getting created out here. So since everything is getting created, I'll just take this parameter out here and I'll say debug. I want to see what are the logs while it is getting created so that just in case if it fails, I will be able to troubleshoot it out. So I'll just say, okay, fine, these are the logs. So I'll just say execute and I'll say yes to all. I'll say yes to all again. And now it's using something known as the classes Azure DevOps at the gmail.com, which is the Azure account that we are using. And in here, if you see, it's telling, okay, fine, the template is valid. Do you want to continue? I'll say yes to all. And now it is trying to make a deployment inside the resource group. So it says the template is valid. I'm good with the template. Now I'll give you a deployment. And if you go into the resource group here, go into the deployments of the resource group, you will be able to see a deployment that is coming in, which is going ahead and creating, let's say, multiple resources out here. And the very first of everything, it's basically creating 2 public IPs, 1 NSG. You'll go ahead and create 2 NIC cards, 1 virtual network, 1 subnet, and then finally 2 VMs with 1 OS disk each. This is, let's say, the order of creation. So this is how the order of creation is going on right now. Any questions till here, guys? Anything till here? Anyone, any questions that I can take? So if you look at this, it's throwing out a lot of logs. The only reason it's throwing out so many logs is because I included a parameter called debug. So I'll say I said hyphen debug and I included this particular parameter. And these are the logs basically that it's generating out right now. And if you look at this also, it's now telling, okay, fine, I have created so many things out here for you, which, which is ARM-NIC-1, ARM-NIC-2. And finally, it's going ahead and creating the virtual machines out here with the name that we provided it to. So this is how you go ahead and write an ARM template. And this is how you create multiple resources inside an ARM template. And going further, we'll also look at what is something known as Terraform. How can we also use that, and etc. So we'll use a combination of ARM and Terraform as in PowerShell basically. This will cover the entire automation kind of the things. So any questions here, guys? Any questions still here? Anyone, anything? Is everyone able to follow this, guys? Are you all good with this? And finally, I have all the deployment being done. So let's verify our resources. So I have two public IPs, two NIC cards, one NSG, two virtual machines, one virtual network, two OS disks. The same way we wanted it to be. So all this is created using one single ARM template. And if you look at the changes that I've done from yesterday, I have not done a great amount of change. I just include the copy index parameter, and that's it. It was taken care of. And also I have included this template in this link out here. So I'll also give this particular link. I've included this particular template in a link. So let me see if it's there. So that this will help you to go ahead and let's say do a practice. So it's saying multiple VM, and this is the template, simple copy.json. So please use this template for your reference. So I've added all these templates in the repository and I'm sending the link out right now. So please use this template for your reference, and please let me know if you have any questions. So that's it from my end today, guys. If there are no further
Hi,
questions,
Kiran.
we are good to go. Yeah.
Kiran,
Yeah,
one
please go
doubt
ahead.
is there.
Mhm.
For copy index, how many lines or which code it will execute two times or three times? Is it between parentheses or how 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 to
For
understand?
copy index, no, it's not
Yeah.
between this parenthesis. So this parenthesis will only tell you what is the offset value, meaning copy index by default starts with 0, goes to 1, 2, and 3. I'm just changing this using a parameter called 1. So it will start from 1, it'll go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and etc. But this is the value, or this is the parameter called copy, which is the heart of it, which will tell you how many times the copy should run. Is this okay? Does that answer your question?
And which lines it will execute two times? I need to understand the
Which
copy.
lines has like I
So it
didn't
has
get
to
you?
create two. For example, if I has to create a two disk or
Hmm.
two NIC cards, so which and all
Hmm.
lines it will execute two times, for example?
It's going to execute the entire this one, like from for example, let's say public IPs. Okay, let's take a simple resource. The public IP is starting from this line to this, right? It'll
Yes.
execute this particular section twice. For the first time, you'll have a value 1. Second time, you'll have a value 2. So the entire resource will get recreated. So the entire
Whichever
lines,
between the resources.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, everything in the resource, wherever you're declaring the copy index, all the resources will get basically executed twice. So it's all the lines that will get executed twice. But this is the parameter which controls how many times it has to be executed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Any more questions, guys? Okay, guys, so we're good to close, and we'll meet tomorrow at the same time. And yep, let's meet tomorrow, and we'll have, let's say, again a hybrid class from tomorrow. I just had some issues, so I couldn't come to the classroom today. So from tomorrow again, it'll be offline and online, both a combination of things. Okay, guys, thank you, and have a great day ahead.